Hey, welcome back. Day 2, Fireside Tats, the official podcast of the Tattoo Improvement Network. Before I get started on the interview, go over to tattooimprovement.com, sign up for our newsletter, keep up with where we're going. You might run into us someplace if you're paying attention. First interview of the day, we have Todo. If you don't know his work, you should absolutely check it out. It's fantastic. He did a piece yesterday that blew my mind. It was in the Best of the Day show. It was pretty impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. What? You know what I wanted to ask before we get into too much? Where did you get that super cool little setup that holds your iPad?
Yeah, I was looking online for something that could clamp onto my lamp or workstation.
Yeah.
And, bring my tablet close to me so I can zoom in and really see the detail.
Yeah.
And, I just found it online, and I was just like, wow, this is some really cool stuff. A little expensive, but, hey, it's worth it.
Yeah, when you're able to pull it just straight around in front of you. We were at Russ Abbott's shop a week or two ago, and he's got a similar setup, but obviously it's at his permanent station, but it's like a big swing arm that swings a full-size like monitor or TV around in front of him.
Right.
Same idea. That's so nice. I'm always like trying to find a place to lean an iPad in my station to keep it from falling over, and that thing is really cool. Is it just like hook on with a like a regular tripod kind of setup?
Yeah, it's tripods. It's like a biomechanical arm, man. It's really cool. You loosen it up and you can move it to any type of direction you want, and it's got a clamp that fits on the tablet itself. Yeah. So you can take that off and get it in position and just click it on whenever you got it right.
Yeah, that's super cool. We'll try to swing by, if you don't mind, the booth at some point today and get a shot of it, and we can clip it in so you guys will see what it looks like. It's really cool. So you've been tattooing since the late 80s? Is that right?
No, actually since the 70s.
Really?
Yep. And
wow.
it was more just kind of, outlaw sort of tattooing back in the day.
Yeah.
And finally I got to a point where, I was good enough. I said, shoot, I need to get into a tattoo shop. And I was in Huntington Beach, California at the time, and I was actually having people walking right into my garage off the street because they heard the machines running. I'm just like going, wow, man, this is great. I said, man, I better get a job somewhere before the IRS busts my ass. So I sent a resume out to Skin Deep, Hawaii, and went out to Maui, Hawaii, and worked there for 4 years, and out to Oahu, the other Skin Deep, for about 4 years.
Yeah, it sounds tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it was fun. So
I bet. Yeah, man, that's awesome. So you've bounced around a lot in your career then.
Oh yeah.
You're based out of where now?
Right now, Atlanta, McDonough, Georgia. It's about 25 minutes south of Atlanta.
Okay. So no formal apprenticeship. You were just kind of tattooing?
No, just taught myself pretty much. And then once I got into a shop, I really watched and learned and listened. A lot of great artists like Dennis Dwyer, I studied from, and Corey Miller back in the day, Jack Rudy, Paul Booth when he was first starting out, it just blew my mind on his black and gray techniques. Guy Aitchison, of course, for the bioorganic. So
yeah, that was just what an impressive group. That
was.
So you lucked out in that the first shop that you worked in had some pretty competent artists.
Oh yeah, we had a lot of great guest artists coming out. Dennis Dwyer, like I just mentioned, used to come out with Gina and go scuba diving all the time and do a couple tattoos, and he taught me how to make these needles called 13 mags. Right, we're talking 1990.
Wow.
Nobody really knew what a 13 mag was. It was like 7 mag was about as far as you got.
Right.
And I was just blown away. I was like, wow, those are great. Look how much field you can get really quick. And so he taught me how to make them correctly, and then from there it just blew up. I started doing my realism, getting into the chrome robot scene, Soriyama designs. I was what we call copying on skin, and it was amazing.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing that we talked a little bit yesterday in one of the shows, I forget which one, about people that have been tattooing for a long period of time, and I know that I'm kind of guilty of it too, but kind of getting caught in a rut, and some guys that were tattooing in the 80s and 90s are still kind of doing 80s and 90s kind of tattoos. You've completely evolved with the times, huh?
Right. Well, even in the beginning, I wasn't into that traditional style art. Everything I drew, I tattooed and sold to people. So I was like, wow, this is cool. I'm doing what I want to do. But I was also an airbrush artist at the time. So I was really into that technical style airbrushing, and I wanted to try to reproduce that on skin. The formulas are kind of backwards from an airbrush technique, but I figured it out and could actually pull it off.
Is your as far as your technique and your process now, I mean, obviously it's very deliberate and really well planned in order to pull off the realism and stuff that you do. Are the techniques kind of traditional techniques of tattooing? Not at all.
No, the formulas that go in. A lot of times I'll work from like a mid-tone to my darks, and then to my lights, and then I would fine-tune everything with the hard blacks. Where traditionally you start with your darks and whip out to your lights.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll use that, but only for certain areas.
Yeah. We talked we talked a good bit about that whenever I started in the mid-90s, and those rules were so the dark to light rules were so kind of like beat into my brain that I never questioned them. And it wasn't until this new kind of art-focused group of tattooers came along and were doing things completely backwards that it opened my mind to at least trying it a little bit.
Right.
And I would have never considered working light to dark or putting my blacks in last or anything like that. But you were doing this back in the early 90s even?
Yeah, and I think the only way that I could really get away with that is the quality of the needles that I was making. I'm from the old school where we made every needle every night and sterilized it and got ready for the next day. 30 sets of needles usually a day. And they had to be perfect, all right? Some of these guys nowadays don't check their needles, and they can't do that light to dark because the darks wash into the damaged skin and stain the light colors. If you got a perfect needle, you'll never have that problem. And so I mean, even back in the day, I could do that light to dark and really get good quality at the end.
Oh, I've never thought of it that way from the needle quality side of it. That's kind of a lost art nowadays.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
In a way, I'm kind of glad. I was sick and tired of sniffing flux all the time.
Yeah, we did the same thing. We showed up at noon every day, 3 hours before the shop opened, and made needles for that day.
Yep.
And now we have apprentices or artists that come through the shop that have no idea. They'll see our jigs or whatever that we don't want to use, but they're still put up, and they're like, "What the hell are these things? What do you do with this?" And I kind of hate it. I wish that people still, because there's a definite art to that, and it's really a good way. I treated it as a really nice way to kind of prepare for the day, to get my mind right.
There are some needles I wish I could still kind of go back and make. Now I'm using cartridges, so I don't really have the long needle setup. But I used to make a 14 stack mag.
Oh, really?
2 7 mags put together and soldered, and Dennis Dwyer made these metal tubes that had a very large opening, so you could actually run those needles in. My God, they pack some color.
Wow,
They're awesome. And then it just got lost.
Yeah, and that's something you probably will never see from one of the big manufacturers.
No,
or anything.
never.
It has gone a lot towards the cartridges, and they are so easy to use. It's hard to. I haven't used a traditional tube and needle setup in I don't know how long now. Are we losing anything in the new generation of artists by kind of like maybe not learning how to? No one's really using coil machine, or I won't say no one, but rotaries have really gained in popularity. A ton of people don't know basic maintenance and tuning on their machines. Are we losing something in that?
Yeah and no. I think, of course, the old traditional way is a great thing to learn. At least have it in your portfolio. As I knew how to do that. But it's really the new type of artwork now cannot be pulled off with those coils.
Yeah.
Really, they can't, because the spring action changes every day, and you're constantly bending and tweaking and retuning, and you never get the same hit all the time unless you got a little jig meter or something like that. I mean, get that spring right, tension meter.
Yeah.
And man, cartridges are just the way to go. And the rotaries now, I mean, they've had rotaries back in Spalding and Rogers days, they were kind of crude, but they had them, and they work great, and the stuff they have now, man, FK irons or ink machines, badass. I love them.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I first bought a rotary. I'd never considered using one. I bought it a couple of years ago, and I thought, man, I'll try it out, and I'll use it. That won't be my daily machine, I'm sure. I instantly was sold on the cartridges, and it was the Cheyenne was the first one I got, and it had the kind of click adjustable stroke.
Yep.
And it's so easy that I literally haven't picked up a coil machine in a year and a half.
Yeah, when Cheyenne first came out, I did a video on YouTube from the Cheyenne Hawk. Can't remember. I think it was a portrait of The Shining or something I did. And man, it got hit like crazy. People are just like, what is this machine? No sound, smooth as silk.
Yeah.
Very, very awesome.
I first saw it. There's a guy, Dimitri HK, out of Paris that does a lot of. He comes to our shop about once a year, and he first introduced me to it. I couldn't even wrap my brain around what it was when I first saw it. It's
Right.
like what he even showed me the cartridges, and I still didn't understand. It's like, what are you doing with them? I don't get it. How do they
Right.
work? I had no idea, and it blew me away that it was completely silent. So where do you see your? I mean, are you happy with realism? Are you looking to continue to do exactly what you're doing? Are you?
Right now, I'm kind of bending a little bit and going with that mixture of new school realism, practicing that style, and I've done some pretty fun things. You know, I definitely see my art evolving more to that area because, you know, realism, if you get too, what do you call it, non-line,
Yeah.
it falls apart over time. You know, I try to build up structure from dark to light, or have that border to make those lights stay and look good. Yeah, so definitely new school realism.
Are you drawing mostly still traditionally? Are you digital preparation, digital drawing?
I've been doing digital since the late 90s. I work with the Wacom tablet and stuff. Also a lot of 3D programs like ZBrush and 3D Studio Max, even back in the day I was into.
How are you using the 3D programs to?
Well, with ZBrush, it's like molding clay. So you can actually create a 3D image of what you're doing and spin it around and get any kind of angle you want, and then also put lighting to it. So that way you have your shadow versus light. You understand it more in a realistic world. You know. And
have you done any kind of tutorials or anything using that?
No, I haven't. I mean, I don't really have the time anymore. You know, I'm just so busy with drawing and painting and tattooing.
Yeah. How as far as painting and drawing for your artwork outside of tattooing, what stylistically, do you work in kind of in realism with painting as well?
Yeah, definitely. Lately, I've been back into the charcoal. I love doing black and white stuff. I did probably about a 2-year span of oil painting, and which was great. Went out with Tattoo Now and Off the Map, doing some of their conventions where they had like artists setting up in a room, and they'd all sort of share, styles and whatnot, and paint live. Man, you learn a lot of cool stuff.
I bet so. Yeah, I remember when they were first. I don't know if it was when they were first doing them, but those art fusion, whatever they were calling it, where basically everyone would step down and just work on the next drawing.
Hell City had that going on. With the drawing, like I think they had like 10 different pads of paper, and they'd spend like 15 minutes a piece or something, and by the time it's all said and done, you got a wild looking piece of artwork.
Yeah, it's a fun thing to sit and watch to watch evolve. What I thought was interesting is like you'll find people when they get back around to their original drawing that they're like trying to change stuff, they're like erasing things back out. Like it's not what I
didn't mean to do that.
Right. So you said you worked in oils for a while. Did you get away from it for any particular reason? Or?
I think most of it was fine-tuning my art in other areas, and it helps my oil painting later on. It's just like tattooing helps drawing, and drawing helps tattooing. You constantly got to mix it up, and you just evolve in all mediums. So.
Yeah, that's kind of the focus of the show, is trying to, introduce tattooers to painters and vice versa, and try to encourage not necessarily encourage painters to start tattooing. That's a different thing altogether. But encouraging tattooers to start working in other mediums if they're not. The one thing that gave me the idea for this is we would bring in young artists through the shop, or I would see them at these conventions, and they immediately started drawing. But they wanted to be a tattooer, so they started drawing from tattoos. They're looking at people's tattoos. Everything they draw looks like a tattoo.
Right.
And I thought, man, if you just started mixing paint, imagine what you could do with.
Right.
Or if you just playing with materials that force you to make a different type of mark that you can't make as controlled of a mark, and forcing you to loosen up a little bit. And I think that's really the biggest value in working in, like you say, charcoal, oil, whatever it is.
Charcoal is a little more strict. Oil, you can start with a base, and then start building your darker colors over top your base. And next thing you know, it evolves to a design you didn't even think of in the beginning. You start seeing it come to life as you're brushing and blending and whatnot.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And you're seeing the artists that are really combining those techniques are doing some really unique things, like you are. Like we interviewed Nick Baxter a while back, and he talks about tattooing like he's talking about painting. He talks about glazing into his tattoos. You know, I do another layer of glaze into this. It's like, wow, it's so crazy you're using these painting terms. And he would talk about, well, you know, after about 3 or 4 layers, I noticed that I wasn't doing any good anymore. 2 years down the road, this tattoo, I could have stopped after the 3rd layer. Those subtle undertones that I put in and the 4th sitting are gone at this point. And so,
most of his tattooing technique, I believe, depends on a 3-session. What do you call it? He starts off with his lights, I believe, and then mids, and then his last thing he does is all his darks and his sharp detail. And he does keep layering over what he started. Brings out those really natural textures that are just amazing.
Yeah, you can recognize his tattoos early on because they are like you say. You'll see someone that has just all these kind of muted bone and ochre colors in a sleeve and nothing else. And you're like, I bet Nick's doing that. Where do people find you? Are you booking, taking appointments in Atlanta? Or?
I'm usually like 2-3 months out. Just give me plenty of notice. Send an email through our website, abttattoo.com. And, you know, if it's something I'm really interested in, I'll get back to you. If it's not, I have 3 other artists that work for me. And, you know, we can probably hook you up with the right one.
Okay. I didn't ask you. Do you own the shop that you're in?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
You had it for how long?
We're going on 10 years.
Okay, great. How do you feel about being a shop owner? Is it something you wish you could hand off from time to time?
Well, I hand it off to my wife quite a bit and have her handle all the headaches. You know, I try to stay focused mostly on my artwork. It works out good.
Yeah, we've talked to a couple of shop owners this weekend, and that's been the common answer. Hey, my wife does that part.
Right.
Seems to be the way it works. Yeah, well, whatever works. Social media, where do they find you on Instagram, Facebook, any of that?
Instagram, it's Todo911 or ABT / whatever tattoo.
Well, thanks.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Y'all have a good one.